How's it going, guys? Gonna be me solo dolo today. How's it going, my friends? Ready for some Giants football today? How's it going, Mike, Shane, Allison, Silo? It's gonna be an interesting afternoon. This Giants team, of course, all the injuries and whatnot. Just gonna be going solo today. Just me, Anthony can't make it, but we here nonetheless. Allison Anthony was at a wedding. I think he couldn't make it back in time, so it'll just be me today. But what's going on, my friends? New Jersey Justin, MVP, Super Taj World. What's going on? How you guys feeling about today? I know this Carolina game is kind of interesting, right? Because we're 1-5. People are already starting to talk about the draft, already starting to talk about Kayvon Thibodeau. And obviously, that's not where we want to be. We want to be talking about winning football. We want to be watching a team that we're excited to watch on Sundays. But, now we have all these injuries with Andrew Thomas. Even Sterling Shepard was ruled out today. Of course, you got Kenny Galladay, Kadarius Toney, Saquon. It's hard to get excited, but I'll tell you what, I always will root for this team to win no matter what. I'm not going to pull an Eagles and do that. But every weekend, this is one of the only games that I feel like the Giants could win, right? I mean, David Sills' season. We need Aaron. We need to get a win for the fallen Giants. Like, we need to get a win. And ultimately, like, this is one of the only games in the next couple of weeks that we realistically can win. We have the Bucks coming up. We have the Chiefs. We have the Chargers. It's not looking too pretty for us in terms of probability of victory in the next couple of weeks. But you know what? Like, this week I've been talking a lot about, I don't know if you guys watch the videos, but talking a lot about like what the future of this team is, right? Like, what do the Giants do if they lose this game? Is Dave Gettleman going to be on the hot seat? Like, what do you guys think? Do you guys think that Dave Gettleman, I know a lot of people think he should be fired, but do you think they should wait until the end of the season and let him retire? Or do you think that the Giants should fire him ASAP? The injuries are unpredictable, but I mean, Gettleman said it. This is one of his quotes. He said, injured guys get injured. And he went and like signed Kenny Galladay, who has a history of being injured or whatever. So, the team's not looking so good right now, and I feel like it's not even a lack of talent. You know what I mean? Like, we have talent at every position. Like, wide receiver is stacked. Defensive line, interior is stacked. Like, we have good corners. James Bradbury and Adoree Jackson are good corners. Xavier McKinney's a good safety. And like, I don't understand, like, when you have all these talented players and they're not performing, is that a coaching thing? The Giants have 22 coaches on their staff, right? The most in the NFL, 22 coaches. But yet I feel like we're missing things. I feel like we're missing things on the coaching side of the ball. And, the discipline has not been there. I mean, Amani Toomer said it last week. He was like, they don't look like they have that edge. They don't look like they really care all that much. So, when you're looking at the Giants now and they're lacking effort, that's a problem. That's a big problem, especially since Joe Judge preaches discipline and responsibility and taking accountability for your actions. And Allison, I'd say my score prediction is 24-17. Carolina's offense has struggled this year. They haven't been altogether that great. So I think that for the most part, I kind of feel like it should be a closer than expected game. But again, like, their pass rush is pretty good, right? They have Brian Burns. They have Hassan Riddick, and like, Hassan Riddick's the guy that I spoke about this week as well. He has 6 or 8 sacks or something like that. And he signed a one-year $6 million deal. But now, the Giants are sitting and they've invested $4 million at outside linebacker. Fadio Denebo didn't even make the team. They guaranteed him $1 million. So it's kind of unfortunate to see that, guys this past offseason signed. We could have allocated that Kyle Rudolph money to a pass rusher like Reddick, who's having a great season so far. But instead, we have a tight end who looks like he can't even run. And that's a big problem for me. And Dylan, I'll take some of your guys' questions and talk about those too. So what should we expect to see from Ellerson Smith and Aaron Robinson? I don't think either of them are going to be playing today. Both of them are just getting back from the IR. So like, they're going to be practicing. They're probably not even football shape just yet. I think that we should expect to see them maybe in a week or two, but I would not expect to see either of them make an impact today or even probably get any snaps today. So, we'll keep an eye on him. But what do I see from them and expect from them? Ellerson Smith is an interesting player, right? He's athletically gifted. Like, he was one of the best, outside linebacker prospects in terms of athleticism. He's pretty raw coming from Northern Iowa. Like, he's not a guy that's going to come in here and make a big impact. He's not a guy that's going to dominate right off the bat. But I do think that he is capable of being a solid player. He's really fast. He's pretty strong. He's quick. I think he could do some good things against heavy-footed offensive tackles. But he's not going to. I worry about him setting the edge in the run game. I worried about Elerson Smith being a good run stopper. I'm not sure if he's going to be a guy. I think he'll be more of a situational pass rusher, maybe a third down pass rusher out to start. So that's kind of unfortunate. But let's see what else we got. Judge may have been a small special teams coach and wide receiver coach, but as a head coach, he is lacking. And White Lotus, I tend to agree with you on that point. Ultimately, when you're looking at Joe Judge, he's a guy that spoke a lot. He talks a lot. You know what I mean? Him and Gettleman, they talk a big game, but ultimately it hasn't been close to what we expected. It's easy to talk a big game. Any of us can go and say, we're going to play well. We're going to punch him in the mouth for 60 minutes. We're going to have a dominant run game, a pass rush, whatever it might be. But the reality is, if you don't actually do that on the field, who the hell cares? Joe Judge has been all talk up to this point and has not shown us that he can be he's made a lot of mistakes, ranging from to calling throwing the challenge flag on a scoring play and wasting a timeout, or going into the fourth quarter with one timeout left when you need those timeouts to maybe make a last minute drive against the Falcons that happened. So, this team is really struggling right now to find an identity. They're making mistakes and beating themselves a lot, but it's a problem. And in Metropolitan, that's a good point. So Carter Coughlin is a guy who, making the transition to inside linebacker this year from the outside linebacker position. He's not much of a coverage guy, right? He's more of a pass rusher and run stopper, but I'd say he's primarily, gifted at rushing the passer. He's not the best when it comes to that. Those other factors, which is why they really haven't used him much in that inside linebacker. I mean, it says a lot that they went out and they signed Bernardic McKinney, who's been kind of washed for the last 2 years. They brought him on to the practice squad and they've already activated him, and he's expected to get significant snaps today against Carolina. So when you're going out and you're plugging in guys off the waiver wire, off the free agent market in the middle of the season and starting them, it's a pretty clear indication that there's some problems going on. But ultimately, you know what? If Judge gets fired midseason, like Allison's saying, do you see Garrett as the temp? I think the whole thing goes. I think if one key piece goes, it's going to be like a domino effect. A new GM, and this is what I want to ask you guys and talk about for a second, because this is a really interesting scenario the Giants have put themselves in, and John Mara's once again pigeonholed himself into a spot where he has to make a big decision, right? He has to decide, okay, am I going to fire Dave Gettleman and bring in a GM who is going to clean house, replace the general manager, replace all these coaches and whatnot that they really just brought in less than 2 years ago? Or are you going to fire Dave Gettleman? You're going to promote Kevin Abrams, and I know that makes most people's ears bleed, and mine as well. I don't want to hear that. You go in, you promote Kevin Abrams, and now you're sitting there with a homegrown guy who's just going to stick with Daniel Jones. He's going to stick with the coaching staff. He's going to sit there and basically let the team continue. But they use Dave Gettleman as a scapegoat. They're just going to let Dave Gettleman retire. He's not even going to get fired, right? John Mara loves to hire his friends, so I imagine Kevin Abrams, this is kind of what would happen. They would bring up Kevin Abrams to the GM spot. They would wait a year, see if the team takes any step forward. If they don't take a step forward, then bam, they're gonna replace Kevin Abrams because they have no choice. So they'll demote him if he's willing to do that. They'll replace him, move him back to a financial role, and then just turn over the whole team again. That's really where we're at. Is there's two ways this goes. Either you blow it all up, or you stick with Daniel Jones and you use those draft picks on maybe an edge rusher or offensive lineman. But Frank, I don't know if they really have Jason Garrett on the staff as a backup plan. So I don't really know if that's really what they had in mind when they hired Jason Garrett. He's a backup plan, a head coach. I think that he got fired from Dallas, and they were like, okay, he has a ton of experience, and they have to make a decision that they wanted to bring in someone they knew. Jason Garrett has experience. He can help Joe Judge in some ways that maybe another guy couldn't. But this is it's a shit show, my friends. What can I say? It's a shit show. But who was the cuter quarterback today? Daniel Jones is the cutest quarterback, bro. Don't get it twisted. And I feel bad for DJ, man. Do you guys also feel bad for Daniel Jones? Because Daniel Jones has been given a pretty crappy hand this year. We needed to see what he was capable of this season, and we haven't been able to see that, right? We've only been able to see a couple of games where he was able to actually play and perform. But at the end of the day, we haven't been able to see Daniel Jones at his peak. We haven't been able to see him play at the highest of his level because our offensive line, half of them are injured. And basically, like, all the weapons are out. Saquon, Kenny Golladay, Kadarius, Sterling Shepard. All of our guys are out. You know what I mean? Like, how are we supposed to blame Daniel Jones for this? A lot of people, and look, Daniel Jones is not without his flaws, right? The turnovers, the bad decision making, like that has been obvious throughout his career. But this year, he's not done that very much. How are we supposed to sit here and blame him for these things when he has no control, right? Like, he has no weapons. His offensive line crumbles. Like, we have Matt Pert at left tackle this week. And last week, he looked absolutely horrendous when he came into the game. Like, this is really bad, man. Like, Daniel Jones, like, how can we properly evaluate him? If you put any quarterback in the situation the Giants are in today, I wouldn't expect any of them. I don't even think if you put Aaron Rodgers in with the wide receivers we have today, Dante Pettis, David Sill, like, I wouldn't even expect him to be able to do much. And I think that's a problem. Like, John Ross, he had a hamstring issue last week, didn't really get a lot of action. I just don't know. And Dylan, this is a quite interesting question. If Pat Shurmur is the head coach, do you think our offense is more productive? Probably, right? I feel like at the end of the day, like, Pat Shurmur had a better offensive system, but he was a bad head coach too, right? Like, Pat Shurmur was equally as a terrible head coach as any of them. So I think, like, maybe ultimately it boils down to, the head coach and the discipline. And I don't know. It's everybody, man. Everybody's out, New Jersey Justin, and he's taking all the blame. Daniel Jones is taking all the blame, but he shouldn't be. Like, Daniel Jones is the last person I blame right now for this team struggling. And I think just having Kadarius Toney alone would have been enough. If we had a healthy Kadarius Toney today, I think that would have been enough to beat Carolina. Like, I straight up think Toney is that good. I straight up think, like, if you can scheme him and get him the ball in space, he's healthy. He's making guys miss. I mean, think about it. Last week, he was on the field for 6 plays. He had 3 catches for 35 yards. Like, he is the whole offense at times. And Sills did get called up, by the way, on limited liquid. He is playing today. He actually apparently looked a little bit excited when Sterling Shepard was ruled out after his pregame warm-up. Did not go so well. But David Sills is expected to play. Personally, I think that he's going to have a nice little touchdown in the red zone. The Giants, Daniel Jones has 1 red zone touchdown this year. 1 red zone touchdown, a passing touchdown. That is a big problem, right? He has 4 passing touchdowns. 3 of them are on balls 20+ yards. And Yuri, thank you so much for the donation. Much appreciated, my friend. If we don't get Tibbs, take a look at Drake Jackson, edge at USC, who plays in the same conference, high upside. Yuri, I think that's a really good point, actually, because ultimately, we would love to have Kayvon Thibodeau, had 3 sacks yesterday against UCLA. The guy's an absolute freaking animal. He's super, super good. One of the most unique out players in this draft class. And ultimately, he could be an elite prospect as an outside linebacker. Chase Young, a lot of people make the comparison. Well, like, we didn't get Chase Young and, like, he's not doing so well. He's a defensive end. He does not fit our scheme, right? Chase Young would not be an outside linebacker in our scheme. That's why, he probably wouldn't have fit. But Kayvon Thibodeau is the quintessential outside linebacker. He's phenomenal. If you're able to get him, he's going to be a top 3 pick, right? Some people say Detroit will be there. Maybe they'll go after him. But they might want to get a quarterback. And they might want to reset the team with a young quarterback of their choice. That's definitely possible. They go that route. I know they have Jared Goff, but are they really going to stick with Jared Goff long term? Who knows? They need receivers. They need probably need a young quarterback. They really just consumed, that contract to get the draft capital. So we'll see what they do there. I would not rule out the Giants losing a lot more games this season and being in line to get Kayvon Thibodeau. But Drake Jackson, another phenomenal prospect. I haven't done much research on him, but I've heard great things. We'll be doing evaluations throughout the offseason, probably end up doing most of them during the season if we lose enough games. But Drake Jackson and Hutchinson, like, those 2 guys I've heard really good things about. I think that the Giants need edge presence badly. So if they're going to be getting an edge presence, it's got to be one of those guys. They have that Bears pick. The Bears have I think the 4th hardest schedule in the league. The rest of the way, or 2nd or 4th, one of those. And that's a really good sign for the Giants because they're going to lose a lot of those games. And if we can get 2 top 10, 2 top 15 picks, we're going to have a pretty good opportunity to get some offensive linemen and also a nice edge rush presence as well. But Allison, if you want to hit me up on Twitter, I can give you an address that you can send some cool stuff to if you want. So yeah, like, hit me up there. But Dylan, should we have cut Nate Solder? I mean, the thing is, the Giants pigeonholed themselves with Nate Solder too. He is a player who was owed more than 9.5 million this year. They restructured his contract, right? He actually settled on a cheaper deal. They did good by him just by keeping him on the team. So he's making 9.5 million next year and 4 million next season, right? So 4 million next year. And it's all, if they cut him, they pay it in dead cap anyway. And ultimately, we're going to see Nate Solder on this team next year too. He's just not going to be starting, right? We'll see Nate Solder, and I don't mind that. Nate Solder should not be starting on any team. He should not be starting on this team especially. And at the end of the day, I think with Nate Solder, you have to have him on the bench. He is a reserve player. He is a last resort. That is why Dave Gettleman pisses me off, because we're forcing this guy to be a starting right tackle when Matt Peart should have been starting since week one. Nate Solder, I'll tell you his stats right now of this season so far. He's an absolute disaster. I mean, I don't understand why they weren't giving the young guys some more love and some more action. I mean, Dave Gettleman said it himself. We have to play the young guys. And instead, we have Nate Solder here, who has allowed 3 sacks, 6 quarterback hits, 12 hurries, and 21 pressures this year. He had his best game last week, but mostly because Daniel Jones was throwing the ball so fast. I just don't really understand why we've been going with him, right? Why is he the starting option at right tackle, and Matt Peart should have been getting those reps. Those are reps that we need to see Matt Peart have, because at the end of the day, he might be the long-term solution. Now, people will say, like, next year, Evan Neal out of Alabama, like, that's the guy that we want in the draft. Tyler Linderbaum, he's a center, a really, really great center at that. Nick Gates probably coming back, but it will take him a while. He has, obviously that fractured leg, and he had a bunch of surgeries, so I don't expect him to be back probably after the first couple of weeks of the season next year. And David, this is Daniel Jones. Like, you can't play to have a good backup, but I will say this. It's never a bad idea to have a quarterback that plays a similar style of game, right? So Daniel Jones and Mike Glennon are like two opposite quarterbacks. I don't really get why the Giants went after Mike Glennon as their backup, because he can't run. Like, he is not. You have to axe half of your playbook if Daniel Jones goes down. Now you're just utilizing the passing plays instead of the read options and the RPOs. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to have, Mike Glennon as the backup. I don't really get why they did that. Maybe they thought he'd be a good mentor, or his neck is so long he can see over the offensive line. Who knows? But I think that, like, Marcus Mariota would be a better backup for the Giants, or even like Cam Newton. I doubt he would ever be a backup anywhere he wants to start. But there's better guys, like even the guy for Taylor Henneke for Washington. He's a pretty decent backup for a team like the Giants. And I think, they just need better players, need better depth. Like, this team, the injuries happen and we're screwed. Like, instantly the team is like gasping for air. We have no good backups. It's tough, man. Gates had a career-altering injury. You're right. He'll be back, but not at the same level ever. I mean, that fractured leg, like, Dylan, you're probably right. He may never play the same again. He may never be able to play as good as he did before he went down. And by the way, it was only a matter of time before Gates got hurt, because they were moving that guy everywhere. I feel bad for Nick Gates, because he showed he was a good tackle, showed he was a good guard, showed he was a good center, and they just kept moving him. Keep him at his position, man. The reason he got hurt was because Billy Price got beat so badly that the guy went to jump at Daniel Jones and landed on Nick Gates' leg instead. I'm not blaming Billy Price, but I'm saying when you're constantly moving guys around and mixing and mashing, like, eventually someone's going to get hurt. Eventually something is going to happen. And the Giants, unfortunately, pigeonholed themselves into a spot where they were moving one of their best offensive linemen when he was playing really great at center. He established himself there last year, and I thought moving him was a bad idea. Within the first 20 minutes, he got hurt, and it's just like, pisses you off to see the fact that they can't solve this offensive line. And that's the number one reason Dave Gettleman's got to go. And I talked about it yesterday. The number one reason Dave Gettleman's got to go is because he hasn't been able to solve the offensive line. If you really think that Shane Lemieux was going to be the savior of this unit, it's tough. It's really tough. And who are the untouchables on this team? That's a really good question. I'd say Kadarius Toney is untouchable. Andrew Thomas is untouchable. And maybe Xavier McKinney is untouchable. But that's pretty much it. What else? What do you guys think? Like, I think those are the 3 guys that I would say might be untouchable. Like, James Bradbury, way too much. He's going to have a $21 million cap hit next year. That's not great. That's really actually a problem. Adoree Jackson, and he's doing okay. He's not doing great. So he's another guy. Doesn't really matter. I'd say Tony Thomas and maybe Xavier McKinney. I think McKinney had 2 interceptions last week. He actually dropped a third. Those are some good players there. Like those are our guys. But Daniel Jones, I think he's on the cusp. You know, yeah, and unlimited, like, yeah, eventually, evidently, like, some of them are untouchable just because of their contracts, which is annoying. But yes, actually, Mads, I would actually throw it in Azeez Ojulari as well. I think that he is an untouchable because I like the potential he has. I think, he's young. He's like 21 years old, and he's still growing into his frame. He's still learning the NFL system and the speed and the physicality. I think he's going to be a pretty solid player. If you have Azeez Ojulari and Kayvon Thibodeau or Drake Jackson as your outside linebackers, I feel pretty good about that. I feel pretty good about that. But eventually, like, the Giants are going to need to have this healthy blend and healthy chemistry between the coverage and the linebackers and the pass rush. The thing is, like, the Giants are always bad at one part, right? If they have good coverage, the pass rush is bad. If they have good pass rush, the coverage is bad. I don't understand how we took a step backward in pass rush this year. Like, how did we have Jabal Shared, and Carter Coughlin starting at outside linebacker, and we had a better pass rush than Oshane Ximines and Lorenzo Carter and Azeez Ojulari? How is that even remotely possible? You know what I mean? Was Dalvin Tomlinson that important? Like, was he that important that this team, like, just needed him to be there, so that pass rush could work? It's pretty crazy. And what do I think about Lorenzo Carter being traded? I mean, at this point, like, if you can get some draft capital and a new GM's coming in here and they need that draft capital to rebuild a foundation or, retool a specific unit, I'm all for it, man. Like, Lorenzo Carter's been disappointing this year. Like, combined last week, the Giants had 0 pressures from their outside linebackers. Like, how, like, that's so bad against, I know the Rams are a good team, but Lorenzo Carter, Oshane Ximines, and Azeez Ojulari combined for 0 pressures. Like, last week, Lorenzo Carter had 0. He had 1 tackle, 0 hurries, 0 hits, 0 sacks, and 0 pressures, right? Over the past 2 weeks, he hasn't recorded a hurry, a hit, or a sack. That's so bad. That is so bad. And I think McKinney untouchable. I think he's a good portion. He's a good part of the secondary. I think he has a lot of potential. I don't want to give up on him just yet. I think he can be a very good player for us. He's just really his rookie season. If you think about Xavier McKinney, this is really his rookie season. He missed most of last year, and when he came in, he was still injured. He was still trying to fight through it. It's just bad. And what idiotic trade will DG pull off this year? I don't think it's an idiotic trade. I think it's what he won't do. I don't think they're going to trade Evan Ingram when they need to. Apparently the Bills are interested in Evan Ingram. They might be wanting to acquire him. So that could be interesting. But I think it's the trades that DG won't do. I think he's going to refuse to trade his guys and hit the restart button on some of these players. Like, Evan Ingram's got to be traded. He's got to be traded ultimately. I think that Sterling Shepard might be a trade candidate. He's been injured every year. We can't depend on him anymore. He's a good player, but Kadarius Toney should be eating his reps at this point. What would you trade for Evan Ingram? Like, so some people make the argument that, like, he will eventually be signed by another team and they'll get a compensatory pick for 2023. But I think we need that draft capital now. And I ultimately think that Evan Ingram will probably be traded for, like, a 5th round pick, like a late 5th round pick. A bag of chips would do. A Snickers bar would do, but I think it'll ultimately be a late 5th round pick for Evan Ingram, which is so disappointing. Coming off a Pro Bowl season, that should hold more value, right? I think that should hold more value. But Shane, you're right. Honestly, Shep is a concussion away from having to reevaluate his career. Like, that's where he's at this moment. And I love Shep. Like, look, if the Giants are smart, they'll trade Sterling Shepard, they'll trade Jabril Peppers, and they'll trade Evan Ingram. Do I want to trade them? Absolutely not. I don't want to trade any of those guys, except for Evan Ingram. I do want to trade him, but I don't necessarily want to trade most of those guys, and we just need the draft capital. Like, we've got to start resetting the button there. If you get 3 5th round picks for all those guys, you can trade up to the early 4s, and you can get a decent player, like a late 3. I don't know. You can trade up, get a late 3. It's tough, but guys, drop your score prediction below. I want to see, before we sign off here and go, hopefully watch a more enjoyable game. If you guys have any fantasy questions, any ideas or opinions you might need from me on a fantasy thing, I know we got a couple of games starting in 3 minutes now, so we'll tune off in a second here. If you have any things now, any questions regarding fantasy football, I would happily answer those before we get started here. My team's looking pretty good, although I have Justin Herbert on a bye week. So I think 24-17 Panthers. And we really need to drop some salary right now, GG would trade them to get Zeitler back. Yeah, seriously, Shane. I mean, you know how mad I was about Zeitler. I was very livid about them releasing Zeitler. I said he was their best offensive lineman, and we didn't even draft anybody. That was a disaster decision. I don't really understand why they did that, but the Giants never cease to confuse me, my friends. It never cease to make me go crazy and question their motives and their moves and why they do things. And, you know, we have to sit here and watch it, a half-eaten Snickers bar. Yeah, I mean, it's really disappointing, my friends. But, guys, enjoy this game as much as we can. Let's see what the Giants can do. At the very least, let's see if David Sills can showcase what we can do. Can we see Caden Smith? I'd love to see some Caden Smith, Yuri. I think that he's a really important player that we have underutilized. I think it's time to actually let him feast, let him go out there on the field and do some things. He's better than what we've got. He's better than Kyle Rudolph, in my opinion. He's better than Evan Ingram too. So we just don't use guys to our advantage. Let's go Sills season, baby. Let's get it going. I think Sills is going to have a touchdown today. I'm pretty excited. So guys, enjoy this game. We'll catch you guys in the after for the instant reaction. Unleash David Sills. He's got the chemistry with Daniel Jones. Hopefully he'll get a score and we can at least be excited and happy about one thing. But enjoy the game. Enjoy the day. Good luck to your fantasy teams, and I'll catch you guys later on today.